we do it or
Welcome to the Links Report. This is Dr. Greg Steinberg, where we talk about the mental game, the golf swing, and everything in between. And I'm joined with my co host, Mark Harmon, who's the guru of swing. Welcome, Mark.
I appreciate that, Greg. I'm not sure about the guru of swing, but I'll take what I can get.
All right, that's good. So last week we talked about the Ryder Cup and who was going to win and why they won. But this week I think it's a really great topic is the ramifications of the win. Like, what will the win do to the players? Like Lowry, he made that putt on the last hole. Now will that boost his confidence? Because everybody says if he'd missed that putt, the Americans probably would have won the cup, but he made that putt. It was under intense pressure and he came through. And I
Mhm.
think that's going to boost his confidence to win maybe another major. And so there's a lot of really interesting, I guess, carry-ons from the Ryder Cup. What do you think about that? You think Lowry's going to have a super year coming up because he came through when it really counted for the Ryder Cup?
Well, that's a great question. Shane Lowry's a great player, but I think in the past we've seen it kind of mixed results with Ryder Cup results. For example, Bernard Langer missed the most famous putt in Ryder Cup history in 1991. Had he made that 6 footer, Europe would have retained the cup, but he wound up missing it and they lost the cup. But that didn't seem to hurt him. He won the Masters a couple, 3 years later after that. And of course, he's the winningest player all time on the Champions Tour. So it didn't hurt his career missing it. By the same token, we've seen other players excel in the Ryder Cup, like Ian Poulter, yet it doesn't seem to carry over in regular events. But then again, we do see a few other players. It does boost their careers later on. So I think there's mixed results. I think it depends on the individual. I don't think you can really do any hard and fast rule of thumb on that, just from what I've seen.
What about Keegan Bradley, the captain? I mean, he's getting blamed for the loss, and he was having some great momentum with his play. You think it's going to hurt his play or no effect?
I don't think it's going to affect him. I think it's really going to light a fire in him, though, to make the next Ryder Cup team, which by some reports will be led by Tiger Woods. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. Um, Real quick, we don't want to rehash the Ryder Cup too much, but I was listening to Michael Breed, who's one of the top instructors in the world, on his radio show on Sirius XM, and he mentioned that the European side out analyticed us, and I think there's some truth to that because analytics are so important. It's just statistics of how you put things together and who should play and who should sit, and I think we probably missed the boat on that. So if there's anything to be gained from that captaincy, it's probably we need a little bit greater reliance on analytics in the future. But as far as Keegan Bradley himself, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, let's hope so because definitely he's playing his best golf in his 40s now. So
Mhm.
it's great to see. We didn't talk about this last time, but do you think if he played on the Ryder Cup as a playing captain, you think it would have been a difference?
That's a great question, also, because who would have been left out? Uh, Maybe Colin Morikawa, maybe Harris English, and then we wouldn't have had the 132nd best pairing out of 132 possibilities, would we? In the foursomes.
I, I
So
think I think I think he should have played honestly
yeah,
because he's got
I,
such a
I
fire. He loves the competitiveness. It would have carried over. I mean, after the captain, picks who plays with who, he doesn't do much. I mean, he's just sitting there at the green. I mean,
yeah.
I think him playing would have been a lot better. And I think America would have won the cup if he definitely was the playing captain instead of
You
just the
know,
captain.
yeah, the final score was 15 matches to 13 matches. All you had to do was flip 1.5 matches, and that would have been Ryder Cup to the United States. A lot of people don't realize that. They think, oh, it's this tremendous blowout. But look at 11.5 to 4.5. Okay. You flip 2 matches, all of a sudden it's 9.5 to 6.5. So every match is actually worth two on the board if you want to look at it that way. So the Ryder Cup was much closer than you might have thought. Yeah, the United States got behind the eight ball on Sunday. What a great comeback they made. But the matches were a lot closer. And had Keegan Bradley played, in retrospect, that would have been the right thing to do. But at the time, I don't think you could fault it because other players had stepped up and they were playing really well too. So, and Bradley, even though he played well at the Travelers by winning, and he still had a couple good events after that, he wasn't showing dominance or a persistent presence on the leaderboard. So, I think before the fact, it was the right call to leave him off. But now, after the fact, I think the United States would have clearly benefited with him on the team.
Yeah, and the other interesting point we made last time, which actually is going to carry over to this past week, is expectations.
Mhm.
So the Americans were expected to win. It's the home field advantage
Mhm.
supposedly, and so the Europeans came out really hot, right? And they dominated the first 2 days. But then on Sunday, the expectations were now with Europe to win. And so then all of a sudden, America, those players came out hot, and they
Mhm.
almost won the Ryder Cup. And so the expectations went back and forth, and so it was a really interesting phenomenon, psychological
Mhm.
phenomenon. And I bring that up because that relates to this past week tournament where Fisk, who's a rookie,
Mhm.
won the Sanderson tournament. And, uh, we talk about the expectations of a rookie are very limited, and so there's a lot less pressure. Do you think that affected him in terms of him winning this weekend or this week?
Right. Well, Stephen Fisk is from Georgia Southern University. And for those of you watching and listening, that's about an hour down the road from where I live. And so I'm familiar with Stephen Fisk from his career there. He holds the Georgia Southern record for the most tournament victories, 9 during his collegiate career. So he's used to winning. Winning is nothing new to him. Forgive me, I don't quite know what his Corn Ferry Tour record was, but it had to be pretty good for him to get on the PGA Tour, right? So once he got into that position, he said that I expected to win on the PGA Tour, and you can't necessarily know when you're going to win, but when you're get in contention, uh, unless your name is Tiger Woods or Scotty Scheffler, victories as a percentage come few and far between. So once you get in that position, you've got to take advantage. I think his history of winning in college really helped propel him to this victory at Sanderson Farms.
So you don't think there's going to be a sophomore slump? I know some other great players like Ricky Fowler came out, had a great rookie season, and then he had like a sophomore slump.
Mhm.
Xander Schauffele, kind of similar. Now that he's expected maybe to do really well and win others,
Mhm.
maybe the following year, this upcoming year, he might struggle a little bit. But it sounds like he's a winner. He knows how to win.
Mhm. Yeah, Greg, you being a sports psychologist, I know you've got a lot of background on sophomore slumps. We see it also in other sports. How often does some rookie come out and play great? Like Mark Sanchez, for example, quarterback out of USC, who played for the New York Jets and went gangbusters his rookie year. And that pretty much turned out to be his best year. So, what have you found with sophomore slumps in other sports or with golf? And why do you think that could be?
Well, just what we said before. I mean, it happens. You're right. In a lot of sports, baseball especially,
Mm.
there's not a lot of pressure on their rookie year. There's not a lot of expectations. Even if they had a great, amateur record, they come out with, not a lot of eyes on them.
Mhm.
They came out, they might come out like you said, gangbusters, and then all of a sudden they start playing the way they should and performing the way they should, and now their expectations get really high, and with expectations come pressure. With pressure, some people don't perform their best under pressure, and that's why I think we see the sophomore slump in all sports.
Yeah. And I just thought of something while you were talking. I think also we have this improvement culture, not only in sports, but in life, where there's a mantra if you're not improving, then you're falling behind. And I think sometimes you got to be really careful with that. So I think a lot of times people think, especially in golf, there's a lot of tinkering going on all the time with what works. So we figure, oh, well, we can always make it better, but sometimes you can't. And so I
Well, it's
think,
interesting you said that because Tiger Woods is the greatest tinkerer, and it's there's one reason for it. He's always trying to get better, and he enjoyed that. He really enjoyed tinkering and trying to get better, and that really turned him on. I think that's a really important psychological, let's say, hack or
mhm,
motivational hack that he uses. The other thing too is um, when you're tinkering, basically it allows you to kind of not stay in that plateau because
mhm,
you're always thinking I'm going to get better and better and better, and you're working on things. Sometimes you get worse, but I think with Tiger Woods and with other people that like to tinker and they have that self improvement mantra, like you were talking about,
mhm,
is it turns them on. Like people that plateau in their skill, like I plateau and I used to play tennis growing up, and I plateaued and lost my motivation. As soon as you plateau, it's really hard to keep up the vibe and the energy. So by tinkering, you allow yourself to keep on getting better, sometimes worse, but you're always getting that, you get rid of that plateau. And so I
but
think that's what we're talking about here.
yeah, and you got to be careful with that too. I'll give you a counter example. Derek Ernst. A lot of people might say, who's Derek Ernst? Exactly. Derek Ernst won the Wells Fargo Championship. I think it was roughly a decade ago. And what did he do? The first thing he did, he said, well, now I've got a 2-year exemption. I'm going to get my swing better. I've got a perfect chance to do so. Well, we've really never heard of Derek Ernst ever again. So you got to be careful about trying to fix what's not broken. And
Yeah.
I think that also comes into play too. So
Well,
as
I
a
think
golf,
we see that a lot when the players chase power and distance.
mhm,
I mean, some of us aren't meant to hit it 330 in the air, right? And if we
mhm,
try to do things our bodies are meant for, it can ruin our swing. And I think, you got to know your limitations. So
mhm.
tinkering at one level is fun and it keeps you motivated, but it also can hurt you, like you're talking about, if you go overboard on the tinkering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it kind of derailed my career too. I was a pretty good mini tour player back in the 1990s, and I had one trusted mentor of mine who was on the Golf Magazine Top 100 teacher list, very non-technical, more like a Harvey Penick type. And another friend of mine, one of his state's best instructors, very technical. And they both told me the same thing. You're taking the club too far back inside. Well, I tried to fix the problem, which really didn't exist. And I was never the same after that. So, not that I was destined to be on the PGA Tour or anything like that, but definitely I was no longer competitive on the mini tour level. So, you've got to be careful about knowing what to fix and what not to fix. And a lot of times it's just a guessing game.
Yeah, I mean, you got to trust your instructor. I know they were mentioning a couple of the players this past weekend. One of them was working with Chris Cuomo, changed his swing from flatter to more upright. Took him
Mm-hmm.
almost 2 years to kind of get the feel. That's a long time to get your swing back on track.
Mm-hmm.
But the players are always seeking something, and I think the lesson that we could talk. There's two lessons really, I think, from tonight that players can take away from what we're talking about. The first lesson is you have to know your strengths, but you also have to know your limitations. If you don't have a body type that can hit it 300 yards, don't search for that. Allow yourself to hit it 250 and then work on your short game because that's where you score. If you
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden think I need to start hitting 300 yards to compete, well, you might get hurt. You might ultimately ruin your swing. And so I think what we're talking about here that's really important is know your strengths, but also know your limitations. And if you know that, yes, you want to keep on working to get better, but you can't overdo it and over tinker, as we might say. And I think the other lesson that's real important for tonight for the listeners is expectations. When, as a lot of people would say, or, a lot of these self help gurus would say, is that whatever you think about me is none of my business. And I think that's very profound. And that is your expectations are none of my business. I'm just going to have my own expectations of what I'm going to do. When you start listening to other people and they put you on the pedestal and they think, now you expect to win, well, that's when you feel the pressure. And when you can, let go of those expectations, it frees you up. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a really important point. And I don't know if you have any other finishing thoughts for tonight for our listeners.
Yeah. Just on those lines, something you say has always resonated with me is when you practice, don't always just work on your weaknesses because it's draining. Also work on your strength because it's empowering, but don't ignore your weaknesses. But if you focus solely on those, that's really mentally draining. And I think that's a really important point that people need to understand too.
Yeah. So again, tonight, we appreciate you listening to the Links Report, where we talk about the mental game, the golf swing, and everything in between. So again, thanks for listening tonight.
Take care.